talking about two transdisciplinary research projects that we developed here at SARAS. And the title goes from watersheds to fisheries, because these are the cases that I will be presenting, and I'll be sharing some lessons arising from this. Let's make sure that it works. Gracias, Néstor. Perfect. And so watersheds and fisheries can be considered social-ecological systems, where there are multiple components which are interacting, and it's hard to predict how they will behave. And so that's one of the reasons why we say that these are complex systems. And also they not only carry that complexity, but also the uncertainty. And we need to learn to deal with these aspects of the social ecological systems. And because of that, the problems that are embedded in these systems, as in general, like social environmental conflicts, are very complex, and there are multiple actors involved and multiple perspectives. And that's why it's very important to bring those into the research that we do. And actually, that's one of the claims of sustainability science and transdisciplinary research, where there's an action-oriented component where we try to look for solutions to real-world problems. And during that process, there's a need to integrate multiple sources of knowledge and co-create or co-produce knowledge with the involvement of multiple stakeholders. And through that, throughout that process, it's important also to be adaptive, and that's something that we will see in the cases that I will present. And now it. Gracias. So as I mentioned earlier, I will be sharing lessons that we learned from these two TD projects involving watersheds and small-scale fisheries at multiple scales. GovernAgua was looking at water governance in Argentina, Brazil, and Uruguay. And we have here in the room some members of the team as well. And fishing transformations is the one project that Jorge mentioned that yesterday we launched a short documentary, and Nacho we are co-PIs of that project. So I will tell you the story a little bit of each project, and then I will be sharing some lessons that are common from these two cases. The GovernAgua project took place during 3 years. It involved 6 watersheds, 2 in Argentina, 2 in Brazil, and 2 in Uruguay. We looked at water crisis as windows of opportunity for governance transformations. And the project had transdisciplinary components, but also interdisciplinary, since there were phases or objectives that were not addressed with stakeholder involvement, for instance. And it involved a number of researchers and students and non-academic actors in each of the bases. The watersheds that you can see with the red line were the cases where we conducted a more deeper TD process, because in that time period, it was impossible to work in the same depth in all the cases. So regarding the TD approach, the problems that we addressed in the process were not only the crisis involving water quality and water quantity, but also other kinds of problems, such as difficulties in social participation in management or basin committees as multi-stakeholder forums. And doing that and addressing and analyzing those crises, we brought together different disciplines and fields of knowledge and different stakeholders, as I will tell you later. There in that figure, the number of colors is the number of disciplines or fields of knowledge of academic fields that were involved. And it involves from the natural sciences to social and political sciences, urban planning. Some of them are actually interdisciplinary fields like environmental management and so on. a diversity of actors were involved, including different levels of governments in those watersheds, non-government actors like cooperatives or social organizations, farmers. And we worked closely together with basin committees, which are advisory boards for water management that are composed of government and non-government actors. And through the lenses of all these actors, we analyzed different crises. As you can see, there are different kinds, including algal blooms and drought, etc. And one of the findings and conclusions is that there are multiple causes leading to this crisis, and we need to better adapt and anticipate. And actually, one of the overarching goals of the project was to contribute to strengthening the capacities to adapt and to anticipate. We conducted different methods. The one that I want to highlight is the participatory workshops, where we invited the stakeholders, and because of the pandemic, some of these were virtual and not face-to-face. And getting into one example, here in Laguna del Sauce watershed in Maldonado department, where we are now, with Gabriel Giordano, who was one of the master students of the project, we invited social organizations working on the environment and the watershed and environmental education. We invited them to get together and discuss aspects of the watersheds, and we invited them to start a collaborative process. So there in the map, you can see where those organizations are distributed in the watershed or close to it. And they commented that they were not connected to one another. And so the workshops also fulfill that goal of bringing the actors together. And it wasn't planned, but a group was formed. They wanted to create a network to stay connected and start to do actions of environmental education and conservation of the watershed, and they are now called Red Activa, Active Network of Laguna del Sauce watershed. And during the participatory workshops, and this time they were mostly in person, we used multiple techniques. And for instance, we did a net map or process net map together. And also we mapped the relationships between the organizations. And it was, like Henrik was saying, it was a way of having fun and enjoying this interaction, and even interacting and discussing the conflicts around this, the watershed and even the organizations themselves. The previous example was more of a local or watershed scale, and also GovernAgua gave the opportunity to do more of interactions between the countries and between the watersheds. And so we wanted to foster cross-site learning. And that was actually one of the interests of the stakeholders who got involved in the project since the very beginning of drafting and writing the project. They wanted to learn from other countries and other watersheds and what was working, what were the problems, and so on. And so we organized this virtual workshop in October 2021 with members of government and non-government sectors. And something to highlight here is that the topics that we discussed in the workshops were selected by participants themselves. We did a questionnaire before the workshop saying, what topics are of interest to you? And we planned accordingly. And it was the stakeholders who presented the situation of their watershed. And then we formed subgroups according to their interests. And they discussed topics such as adaptation in context of crisis, challenges to interinstitutional coordination, which was a huge topic of concern, access to information, and social participation. The GovernAgua Project led to numerous types of outputs, and in addition to academic publications, we wrote reports and overviews of publications, and we did a policy brief in Spanish and Portuguese. But also we did made public the recordings of the webinars, and we worked with Esteban's son on a video and of the project, sharing with the voices of stakeholders of the main three watersheds, telling the story of the project from their perspective as well. And I invite you later to check on the website of the GovernAgua and watch that video. Going now to the second project that I'm going to tell you about. So this is the fishing transformations project. Here we are looking at small-scale fisheries, which are an important activity, both in terms of like social, economic, and also cultural values. It's an activity that you can find here on coastal Uruguay, but also inland, and many people are involved in the activity. And we analyzed, we started looking at small-scale fisheries also as a food system, and what it involves from the fish capture until the fish is consumed, and what happened with the fish waste. And these so small-scale fisheries are going through a number of challenges and difficulties that are affecting their viability. But instead of looking at those problems, we said, let's look at initiatives or people who are doing things differently, who are innovating to change and to solve some problems. And so we mapped in different parts of the country what we called innovative initiatives regarding small-scale fisheries as a food system. And these are innovative because they are, for instance, changing the way they catch the fish or the way they sell it, or how fishers connect to the restaurants and the chefs, or how fishers connect with the schools and how to educate and communicate about the fishery and the fish and so on. And in this project, one of the goals is to catalyze transformative change by bringing together these different initiatives. And so each initiative themselves is innovative, but if we want to promote bigger changes, we need to scale that up. And so we invited them. Oh, sorry, before saying that we invited them, who are we? So the team is this, and the team involves researchers from different fields like fisheries, public participation, environmental humanities, coastal management, economics, but also arts and communications. And there's a filmmaker and a journalist, and so there's a diversity of members and experiences that are involved in the project. And so we, the team, invited the initiatives, which we already got in. We had already like a collaborative relationship because of another like a previous phase of the project. And in May this year, we invited them to come to SARAS to work together on thinking about the future, and the future that we and they desire for small-scale fisheries in the country. And the way we did it was not only fun, but it was it drew upon arts-based methods, like the one that you can see in the picture, where we worked with collage. So this technique is called collaging futures, and it was designed by Silvana Juri, who is an associate also at SARAS and a colleague of hers. And at first, the fishers were like a bit shy of working this way, and you know, like playing with papers and drawing and so on. And then the reflections and comments that they shared were fascinating, and for us all. So after that work, so and with illustrator, it's not illustradora, we got to this vision that shows the future that is desired, and it involves, for instance, that fish is more, it plays a more important role in the diet of the Uruguayans, but also that the role of women in the fishery has more visibility. And so it has multiple dimensions. I will not get into this at the moment, but after getting to this vision, this desired vision, we discussed together, what can we do? What actions can we undertake to get there? And so now we are in the process of getting to the next stage of starting to move towards that desired future, or somewhere else. We don't know what the future is like and where we will get, but this is an ongoing project. And so the first output that we prepared before invited them to come to SARAS was a paperback, well, it was a catalog, both online and in paper, where each of these initiatives is presented, and there's a story telling about the initiative. So it's I will invite you to read it afterwards, and Sophia played an important role in that. And yesterday we launched this short film that tells the story of the initiatives, but also of the process of the initiatives starting to work collaboratively. So based on these two projects, GovernAgua and fishing transformations, I can say that here you can see some ingredients that are key for transdisciplinary projects. And so first, that problems addressed need to be of key interest to stakeholders, and not just of interest to academics, but also non-academic actors. And the academic and non-academic actors should be involved throughout the project. And throughout that project, it's important to use multiple means of communication and be careful to have like appropriate information management. And when I say information, I don't mean just facts, but multiple sources of knowledge as well. And I think it's important to have sufficient time for discussion among team members from different disciplines or backgrounds, because as we all know, like one term can mean different things for different disciplines. And we found that it was important to take more time for those dialogues. And regarding dialogues, we found, and these projects also show, as in the literature, that it's important that the dialogues are well facilitated, and that decision-making in the group or among participants can be taken after deliberation and through collective decision-making. And finally, like an important ingredient is to be flexible and to be able to adapt and to draw upon creativity as well. Again. No sé qué tengo que tocar. These projects also show that in addition to social learning and knowledge co-production, the outcomes include strengthened social networks, empowerment of local actors, and transformative change to different degrees. And I wanted to share with you a quote from a participant, a non-academic participant from the GovernAgua Project, who said, "Through the project, we learned that transformative change can only be reached through the convergence of multiple actors and institutions. It's necessary to meet each other, know their views, and propose transformations that fulfill communities' concerns and needs." To wrap up some conclusions, these cases show that transdisciplinary and participatory process involving multiple actors can be powerful and can be transformative, and they can contribute to moving towards more sustainable trajectories, like the fishing transformation project show, for instance. Also, these cases show that TD projects can involve multiple scales. They don't have to be necessarily local. They can be scaled up. And that communication platforms are key tools, and we have to make like good use of those the possibilities that we have. And I would say that after the pandemic, we are now, and people in general, more used to using different tools that can help in these projects, especially when it comes to national or international scales. Early involvement of the different actors is highly recommended since the very beginning of the project. When we are planning what to do, start to plan the project with the actors whom we are going to work with. And arts-based methods can foster creativity, participants' engagement, and collaboration. And finally, I think that there is room for further involvement of the humanities in TD projects on social ecological systems. And so I'm very looking forward to discussing with you all about how to work on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mica. That helped me understand why, when I was telling Nacho, congratulations on the film, this is the summit of the culmination of the project, by email, and he responded, this is just the beginning, Jorge. Let's hope. Any questions or any comments, Stephen?
Jorge.
Thank you for a great presentation. And I was curious, you mentioned something that I think is really important, that sometimes the time that is required for the communications, for the deliberations and consultations in multi-stakeholder processes is glossed over too much in, let's say, funding initiatives and so forth that don't sort of allow the proper time for this. I was curious to know what your own reality was versus your own expectation going into this project about how much time would have to be taken to develop those relations and those communications with your co-production partners.
How much time to start with the...
Yeah, I mean, did you? So, I mean, you've been through this before, obviously. So maybe you had a realistic idea, but I often think that it's not fully appreciated how much time these processes take.
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I would say, first of all, that it depends on the case and the actors and the context and many other variables. But for instance, in the GovernAgua project, it took us a few months to work on the writing and preparation of the proposal, and we had meetings at that time. But there were already relationships with the actors that were being invited at that time. So I would say it depends. However, for instance, the example that I shared with the social organizations and NGOs in Laguna del Sauce watershed, most of those relationships were built, were new, and they were built mainly thanks to the efforts of these master students who had plenty of time to spend on that. And so meeting with them at first individually and then together. So I think that's something important to keep in mind, not just invite stakeholders for a workshop. If they don't know you, they may not come, for instance, or they may not be comfortable or confident to share actually what they think. And so I would say that it depends, but first I would recommend more of an individual relationship between members of the team and these other stakeholders. And regarding the funding agencies, and also in my previous experience, I think that when there's a flexible time plan of the project, or the funding agency is flexible, like the IAI, the Inter-American Institute for Global Change Research, then there's more flexibility of working and planning a TD process. Otherwise, you get you have so much limitations and timelines that you have to fulfill and so on, that you may not do the process as it should be. So yeah, that can be a challenge.
So this might be a longer conversation, but I was very interested in the participatory process when you were actually creating the documentary, in terms of you're telling a story, a narrative, and the construction of that narrative. How were the stakeholders involved in the construction of that narrative? Was it just taking their ideas from the workshop you had and then incorporating it? Or did you actually share sort of ideas for how scenes would develop and what's, how the narrative would unfold? Or did they see rough cuts of the film when it was in development and give you feedback? I'm just curious about your process.
Good. Yeah, so the production of the film could have been more participatory than it was, but so how we frame it was that when we invited participants to come to the workshop, we allocated some time to discuss the film, and so we did an exercise to say what messages do we want to include regarding small-scale fisheries or artisanal fisheries, and what messages we want to leave out. And so people were like commenting and they were discussing. And for instance, as we were talking with Nacho over the coffee break, fishers didn't want to show how marginalized they can be, for instance, or how like in different communities there are like so many problems and issues. They wanted to show the story of fishers who are doing things to change the situation and to get to a better future. What we had already decided before bringing everyone together was that in the film we would tell the story of each initiative and also of the project, of the process of bringing them together. And so after this participatory exercise in the workshop, the filmmaker and Nacho had like many meetings of after going to record and so on, of deciding what to keep and how to like how the scenes would be showed and so on. But there wasn't time actually, because of the launch and so on, to show, for instance, a previous version of the film to the initiatives for them to get to give feedback and change and so on. Do you want to add something?
I think that's a great question, and I would say, or to add to what Mika already said, is that we had previously like a very good knowledge about each initiative and the people behind the initiative and the message they want to send to the audience, because we have been in a long process from knowing individually, making interviews, going to their homes or to their boats, talking a lot. So I think we have, and we developed this catalog with Sophia as well. And in the catalog that we described in the history of each initiative, we had that iterative process with them. So we have their feedbacks and what is the important things to be told about them. So when we moved to the short film stage, it was quite easy for us to know what's the message that each initiative wants to show. So after a while, it turns out to be like quite easy to integrate these kind of messages. And we basically structured like the script of the short film based on the main objectives of each initiatives. So we grouped them as community development or added value, and we tried to group them in under this kind of big umbrella or objectives of these initiatives. Thanks.
Great, thank you.
Just to add, because I forgot, I had this to share something and then I forgot. Yesterday, after everyone watched the short film, we asked people to close their eyes, think about what they had watched, and write down one word that was like inspired them or that was in their minds, whatever. Here, I just have a few, but just to comment that the word, for instance, collective work, cooperative work, collaboration, future, hope many times. So it's like we feel that the aim of the project and the team was accomplished because it was really inspirational.
Thank you very much, Mika. As we get ready for that transition, this is a good transition into Florencia's talk, I suppose. But as you need to do any changes for a PowerPoint?